Have you ever woken up on your birthday, waiting for a call that never came? That was me. It was my 68th birthday, and I told myself not to expect too much. Children grow up, life gets busy, schedules clash. Still, hope has a funny way of lingering, even when you try to chase it away. I made my coffee, sat at the little kitchen table, and stared at a single candle stuck into a muffin my cake. It wasn't the first time. I'd celebrated alone, but this year felt heavier. My son Daniel hadn't called in months. My daughter Grace kept saying she'd visit soon, but her soon had stretched into nearly a year. Have you ever replayed old memories just to fill the silence? I did. Birthdays when the house rang with laughter. Daniel chasing balloons. Grace helping me bake cakes. The chaos I once complained about, the chaos I now ached for. By noon, I checked my phone again. Still nothing. Not even a simple happy birthday. I thought about calling them, but then that small, sharp voice whispered, "Shouldn't you matter enough to be remembered without reminding?" By evening, the silence felt unbearable. So I turned on the radio, just for noise. That's when it happened. The DJ announced a throwback hour. The first notes drifted through the speakers, a song I hadn't heard in decades. Forever My Home. The lullaby I used to sing to Daniel and Grace every night. My breath caught. Memories rushed back. Grace, falling asleep in my lap. Daniel whispering just one more time. That song wasn't just music. It was our thread, woven through sleepless nights, long car rides, and bedtime routines. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered the words, and then my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, assuming spam. But when I looked, it was Grace. A video call. My heart pounded as I answered. "Mom." Her voice trembled. Behind her, I heard the faint echo of the same song. Grace's eyes shimmered. "Mom, are you listening to the radio right now?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, they just played it. Our song." She turned her phone so I could see her living room. The same melody played from her record player. "I don't know what made me pull this out today," she admitted. "I just felt this urge. And then I realized what day it was. You remembered my birthday." My voice cracked. Grace nodded, guilt flashing across her face. "I did. I should have called sooner. I'm sorry. But when I heard this song, it felt like you were here with me. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I wiped my eyes. I used to sing it to you every night. You always wanted just one more time." Grace laughed softly. "I remember. Daniel used to fall asleep first, but I'd stay awake just to hear you keep singing." At the mention of Daniel, my chest tightened. His silence had been the hardest of all. Almost as if reading my thoughts, Grace said gently, "Mom, maybe we should call him. Together, play the song. Maybe it'll reach him too." I hesitated. Daniel had been distant for years. Work, pride, maybe pain, whatever it was, he had shut me out. Could a song break through where words had failed? "All right," I whispered. Grace conference called Daniel. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Just when I thought he wouldn't answer, he did. "Grace, Mom." His voice was sharp, caught off guard. Grace didn't explain. She simply turned up the music. "Do you hear this, Daniel?" There was a pause. Then, a shaky laugh. "That song. I haven't heard it in forever." I leaned in. "Do you remember, Danny? I used to sing it every night." Silence, then a soft sniffle. "I remember, Mom. I didn't think I would, but hearing it now, it all came back." For a moment, the 3 of us sat in silence across different homes, different screens, but bound by the same melody. Years of missed birthdays, unspoken resentments, and distance began to crack. "Mom," Daniel finally said, his voice gentler than I'd heard in years. "I'm sorry I didn't call today. I didn't even realize, but hearing this, I can't run from it anymore. From you." Grace added softly, "We've been so caught up in our lives, we forgot who made those lives possible." Tears streamed freely down my cheeks. For so long, I had begged silently for their presence. And now, because of one old lullaby, they were finally looking at, merely looking. "Maybe this is our sign," I whispered, "that no matter how far we drift, Love can still find its way back even through a song. That call lasted 2 hours. We laughed, cried, and remembered. It wasn't perfect. Not everything was healed in a single night. But something shifted. When I finally went to bed, the quiet no longer felt like loneliness. For the first time in years, it felt like peace. That song had reunited us. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest, a mixture of lightness and fear. Lightness because, for the first time in years, both of my children had spoken to me on the same day. Fear because deep down, I wondered, would it last? Or was it just a fleeting moment stirred by nostalgia, destined to vanish once the song faded from their memory? Tell me, have you ever felt that bittersweet mix of hope and hesitation, when a door to love opens again, but you're terrified it might slam shut? That was me, lying there in the quiet. I lingered in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling. My house was quiet as always, but the silence no longer felt suffocating. Instead, it felt expectant, as though it was waiting for something. I replayed the sound of their voices in my mind. Daniel's hesitant softness, Grace's laughter tinged with guilt, the way we had shared old stories like no time had passed at all. Then, as I made my breakfast, my phone buzzed. A message from Grace lit up the screen. "Good morning, Mom. How about dinner at my place this Friday? Bring your favorite recipe." I nearly dropped the plate in my hands. Dinner, an actual invitation. Do you know how rare that was? I couldn't even remember the last time Grace had asked me over for anything more than babysitting. I typed back quickly, my fingers trembling. "I'd love that. I'll make the chicken pot pie you used to beg for." And then, almost as if the universe was listening, another message appeared. This time from Daniel. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it. "Hey Mom, I've been thinking about last night. Can we meet for coffee this week? Just us." I froze, staring at the screen. Daniel, who had kept his distance for so long, actually wanted to meet. Tears blurred my vision. It was as if the walls around my family were cracking open, brick by brick. Later that day, I pulled out my old recipe book, thumbing through stained pages, faded ink, and scribbled notes. Cooking had always been my way of showing love, but over the years, I had stopped making those family dishes. What was the point when no one came to eat them? But now, there was a point again. When Friday came, I arrived at Grace's home carrying the pot pie, still warm and smelling of rosemary and butter. Her children, Emma and Lucas, ran to the door as soon as they saw me. "Grandma," Emma shouted, wrapping her arms around my waist. Lucas chimed in, "Did you bring dessert?" I laughed, pulling out a plate of oatmeal cookies from my bag. Their faces lit up instantly. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't admitted to myself. I wasn't just missing my children, I was missing their children too. The next generation of memories I had nearly lost because of our silence. Grace hugged me tightly at the door. "Mom, I'm so glad you came." Inside, her dining table was set with care, candles flickering softly. We ate, we talked, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider peeking into my family's lives. Grace asked me for cooking tips. The children begged me for stories about when their mom was their age, and we laughed until our stomachs hurt. At one point, Grace got quiet and said, "You know, when I played that song the other night, it felt like you were standing right beside me." I think I needed that reminder. I don't ever want you to feel forgotten again. Her words hit me deep. Have you ever heard something so gentle, yet so powerful, that it makes you want to cry right there at the table? I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "It means more than you know, Grace. Sometimes, a parent just needs to know they still matter, that they're not invisible." She squeezed my hand. "You're not invisible, Mom. Not anymore." That night, I went home feeling full, not just from the meal, but from something richer. Connection, belonging. The emptiness that had haunted me was beginning to lift, but I knew there was still one more piece missing. Daniel. The next morning, I woke up to the faint sound of rain tapping against my bedroom window. Normally, the rain would have added to my loneliness, making the house feel even more hollow. But that morning, it was different. The world outside felt softened, like it was slowing down to match my pace. I shuffled into the kitchen, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the table where I had left an envelope the night before. I hadn't dared to open it, yet I wasn't ready for what it might stir up, but something inside me whispered, "Don't wait any longer." Finally, I slid my finger under the seal and pulled out the folded sheet of paper. My breath caught as I began reading. It was a letter from my brother, Aaron. We hadn't spoken in years. Not because of anger or betrayal, but simply because life had swept us along different paths. He had moved to another city for work, then got married, then had kids. And somewhere along the way, phone calls turned into occasional texts. And then, silence. The letter was simple, handwritten in his messy scrawl. "Happy birthday, Eli. I know I've missed too many of your birthdays. I know I haven't been there in the way a brother should. But last week, I heard this song that instantly reminded me of you, the one you used to play on your old guitar late at night. It brought back every memory, the laughter, the fights, the way we used to dream about the future. I couldn't ignore it. I had to write. I hope it reaches you in time." I set the letter down, my hands trembling. That song, our song, when we were kids, I used to play it on the porch while Aaron sang along off-key, but with so much joy that it didn't matter. As I sat there, I could almost hear it echoing faintly in the corners of the kitchen, pulling me back to those summer nights when everything felt possible. And then it hit me, songs weren't just music. They were bridges. Bridges between the past and the present, between silence and reconciliation. For the first time in years, the silence in my house didn't feel oppressive. It felt alive. It felt like the universe was whispering, "Something is coming, be ready." And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed on the table. It was a text message from an unknown number. "Check your front porch." My heart pounded as I stood up, walked slowly to the door, and pulled it open. Sitting there, in the middle of the doormat, was a small package wrapped in brown paper. I bent down, picked it up, and carried it back to the kitchen. When I unwrapped it, I found a CD inside, with a single word written across the surface in Aaron's handwriting: "Play." I stared at the CD in my hands for what felt like hours. Nobody used CDs anymore. It felt almost ancient, like a relic from our childhood. And maybe that's why Aaron chose it. He could have sent me a link, a playlist, or even just written the song title in his letter. But no, he wanted me to hold it, to feel its weight in my palms, to remember those nights when we used to burn songs onto blank discs, then scribble titles across the shiny surface with permanent markers. Laughing when the ink smeared wasn't just music, it was memory, tangible, heavy. Have you ever held something so ordinary, yet felt like it carried the weight of your entire past? That's what it felt like. I found my old CD player tucked away in the back of the hallway closet, dusty and forgotten. I wiped it down, plugged it into the kitchen socket, and slid the disc inside. The player whirred to life, and then there it was. The first strum of guitar strings. The song, our song. A lump rose in my throat as the melody filled the room. Suddenly, I wasn't in my kitchen anymore. I was back on the porch of our childhood home. The smell of cut grass thick in the summer air, fireflies blinking in the yard like tiny lanterns. Aaron sat cross-legged beside me, tapping the rhythm against his knee while I played. We didn't have much growing up, but those nights felt like riches. Music was our escape, our secret world where nothing could touch us. As the lyrics poured through the speakers, I closed my eyes and let the sound wash over me. Every word struck a chord deep inside, unearthing memories I thought I had buried for good. Birthdays spent side by side, whispered promises that no matter where life took us, we'd never drift apart, but we had drifted. Somewhere along the way, that promise got lost in the noise of adulthood. We grew older, got busy, and without realizing it, let silence stretch between us until it became normal. Yet here it was again, the song, the bridge between then and now. And in that moment, it felt as though Aaron was reaching across all those empty years, holding my hand again. I didn't even realize I was crying until I felt the tears running down my cheeks. I sank into a chair, clutching his letter while the chorus repeated. It was so raw, so painfully beautiful. I almost couldn't bear it. Then the track ended. For a moment, the silence that followed was deafening. But then, another track began. Not the same song, a recording. Aaron's voice. "Hey Eli," he said, his tone a little shaky, like he wasn't sure what to say. "I don't know if you'll ever actually listen to this, but if you do, happy birthday, brother." My hand flew to my mouth. "I can't believe how long it's been since we celebrated together," he continued. "I was listening to this song the other night, and all I could think about was you. I know I've let time slip away. I know I've missed too much, but I want to make it right. If you'll let me." The weight in my chest grew heavier with every word. "I don't expect forgiveness overnight," Aaron said, voice thick with emotion. "But I don't want another year to pass with silence between us. If you're willing, meet me where we always used to go. You know the place. I'll be there Saturday evening. No pressure, just I'd really love to see you again." The track ended, leaving only the faint hum of the CD player. I sat frozen, staring at the spinning disc as if it could give me answers. The place, of course, I knew what he meant. The old bridge by the creek, the one we used to walk to when we needed to escape. It had been our sanctuary, our little escape from the chaos at home. But now, what was it? Could a bridge from our childhood still carry the weight of our adult regrets? I leaned back in my chair, mind racing. A part of me wanted to run there that very second, not waste another moment. But another part of me hesitated. What if it was too little, too late? What if seeing him reopened wounds instead of healing them? Yet deep down, I knew the truth. That song, that voice, that letter, this wasn't just nostalgia. It was a lifeline, and lifelines aren't meant to be ignored. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Aaron's words looping in my head. "I'll be there Saturday evening. No pressure, no pressure." But my chest felt heavy with it. The weight of years, the silence, the things we had never said. Saturday came faster than I expected. All day, I moved in a haze, unsure if I was preparing to go or preparing to hide. My coffee sat cold on the counter, untouched. Every time I passed the CD and letter on the table, my eyes lingered. They felt like they were daring me. Will you stay silent, or will you choose to show up? By late afternoon, I finally made my decision. I pulled out my old denim jacket, the one I used to wear when Aaron and I would trek to the creek. It still smelled faintly of campfire and summer rain, and slipping it on felt like stepping back into a younger version of myself. The walk to the bridge was familiar, yet foreign. The neighborhood had changed, new fences, freshly paved sidewalks, a corner store replaced by a cafe, but the path itself felt the same. Every step carried me backward in time, to Aaron racing me to the water's edge, to the two of us skipping rocks, breathless and laughing. And then, suddenly, there it was. The creek, the bridge, and Aaron. He stood near the railing, hands shoved deep into his pockets, rocking back and forth on his heels the way he always did when he was nervous. His hair was shorter now, streaked with gray. His shoulders looked heavier, carrying years I hadn't witnessed. But when he turned and saw me, his eyes lit up in a way that was unmistakably him. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Aaron spoke, voice soft, almost careful. "You came by swallowed hard." I did. Silence stretched between us. Not the empty kind we'd endured for years, but a fragile, tentative pause, like the space between notes in a song. "I wasn't sure you would," he admitted. "I wouldn't have blamed you if you hadn't." I stepped closer, the ground beneath me steadying. I almost didn't. But I couldn't ignore that song, or your voice. Something in his expression shifted. Relief, maybe. Gratitude. A spark of the boy I used to know. And for the first time in years, I felt the distance between us begin to shrink. Here's the rewritten part to final script, 1,250 words, after adding hooks and bridges close to your request without trimming. We stood there, side by side at the edge of the creek, letting the quiet fill the space between us. The water trickled beneath the bridge, soft and constant, like a reminder that time had kept flowing, even when we hadn't spoken a word to each other in years. For a while, neither of us dared to break that silence. My heart pounded, my mind raced, and I wondered, was this the moment that would mend us, or the moment that would finally prove the distance had grown too wide? Then Aaron spoke. His voice carried the same familiar timbre, but it was softer now, more worn. Do you remember the summer we tried to build a raft out of old planks and rope? A laugh slipped out of me before I could stop it, sudden and unsteady. How could I forget? We barely got 3 feet before it sank, and you swore up and down it was my terrible knot tying that doomed us. Aaron chuckled, shaking his head, and for a moment, I saw the boy I once knew flicker across his face. It probably was your knots, but you were the one keeping us afloat. Eli, you always tried to hold things together. That's who you were. His words pierced deeper than he could have known. Because for years, I had carried the opposite belief that I was the one who let it all crumble. My throat tightened. Funny, I always thought I was the one who let it all fall apart. Aaron's smile faded. His eyes dropped to the ground, shadows pooling beneath them. He kicked gently at the dirt, his voice low. I let it fall apart too. I should have called. I should have written. I should have done something. The honesty in his tone startled me. I had imagined this moment 100 times, rehearsing every sharp word I wanted to throw his way. In my mind, this reunion was a courtroom. I'd list every grievance, and he'd defend himself. But standing there, hearing him admit fault with no excuses, my carefully built script dissolved. I folded my arms, more to keep myself from shaking than out of defiance. Then why didn't you? All those years, Aaron, why didn't you pick up the phone? He looked out over the water as if the ripples might answer for him. His voice trembled with quiet shame. Because I was ashamed. Every year that went by, the harder it became. I'd tell myself, I'll call next week. I'll reach out next month. But the weeks turned into years, and then, when I heard you were struggling, he faltered, biting his lip. I told myself I didn't deserve to come back. His words struck me like a stone cast into the water. Ripples of anger, sorrow, and strange comfort spread through me all at once. For so long, I believed his silence meant I wasn't worth the effort. To learn it came from shame it was infuriating, yes, but it also meant I had never been forgotten. You should have tried, I whispered, my voice cracking under the weight of it. I needed you, Aaron. There were nights when I needed someone to remind me I mattered, and you weren't there. The confession trembled in the air between us. His shoulders slumped, and I feared he might turn away, retreat again, but instead, he stepped closer, his eyes older, wearier, but still Aaron's met mine. You're right, I failed you, and I can't undo it. But Eli, if you'll let me, I want to show up now. I don't want another year, another day to slip away. I searched his face, every line, every gray strand, every shadow of the years we had lost. Beneath it all, I still saw him, the boy who raced me to this creek, who played until the fireflies came out, who once called me his brother. Why now? My voice came out smaller than I intended. Why, after all this time? Aaron hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket. Slowly, almost shyly, he pulled out a small, worn notebook. Its edges were frayed, its cover scuffed from years of use. He flipped to a page marked with a folded corner and handed it to me. The words scrawled at the top made my knees weak. Things I should have said to Eli. I blinked rapidly, my throat tightening as I scanned the page. Line after line, note after note filled it. Call him and apologize for missing his birthday. Tell him I missed the creek. Remind him he's not alone. Dozens of entries. A catalog of regret. My hands trembled as I closed the notebook. I looked up at him, tears stinging my eyes. You kept this. Aaron nodded, his jaw tight, his gaze flickering with both shame and hope. Every time I thought about reaching out, I wrote it here instead. It's pathetic, I know, but it kept you close, even when I was too much of a coward to say the words aloud. I clutched the notebook to my chest. It was heavy not with paper, but with years, with things unsaid, with proof that, even in silence, I had never been erased. It's not pathetic, I whispered hoarsely, it's human. Aaron's eyes glistened. For a moment, I thought he might break entirely, but instead he gave a small, trembling smile. Then maybe there's still hope for us. Something in me softened. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a crack in the armor I'd worn for so long, a tiny shift. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to take one small step forward. We sat on the bridge then, our legs dangling over the edge the way they did when we were boys. The creek below shimmered gold in the dying sunlight, as if the water itself remembered us. For a long while, we didn't speak. But it wasn't awkward anymore. It was the kind of silence that follows a storm, when the air finally feels breathable again. Aaron was the one to break it. You know, I missed more than birthdays. I missed watching you live your life. I don't know how to make that up. I stared at the water, my reflection rippling and bending. You can't. That time's gone. The words came sharper than I intended, and I braced for him to pull away, but he didn't. He simply nodded. I know, but I can be here now, if you'll let me. I turned to look at him fully. He wasn't the boy from our summers, and neither was I. We were both scarred, both aged, both bearing the cost of silence. But maybe that's what time teaches us. Broken things can still be mended if held with care. You don't get to erase the past, I said quietly, but you can walk with me in the present. That's something. His lips curved into the faintest smile. Then let me show up this time. The air grew cooler as the sun sank, and for the first time in years, the tight knot in my chest loosened. Maybe I wasn't ready to forgive everything. Maybe healing wouldn't come in a single evening by the creek. But as we sat there, side by side, I realized something. The song, the letter, the notebook, they had done their job. They reminded me that even after years of silence, connections could flicker back to life if given the chance. And for the first time in a very long while, I chose to believe in that chance. When I got home that night, the apartment felt different. The walls hadn't moved. The furniture was exactly where I had left it, and the familiar creaks of the pipes still whispered through the building. But something inside me had shifted. The silence, which for months had felt like a weight pressing against my chest, wasn't quite as suffocating. It was still there, quiet, steady but lighter somehow, as if the air itself had been stirred by the conversation at the creek. I draped my denim jacket over the back of the chair and sat down at the kitchen table. The letter and the CD lay exactly where I had left them, side by side like patient companions waiting for my acknowledgement. My fingers brushed over the paper. The edges were soft now from being unfolded and refolded. The ink slightly smudged in places where my thumbs had lingered too long. But for the first time, I didn't feel the old anger when I looked at it. I didn't feel that sharp sting of betrayal. Instead, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in years: possibility. The creek replayed in my head like a reel of film. The look in Aaron's eyes when I finally said he could be part of my present. The crack in his voice when he admitted his shame. The way relief softened his whole face when I didn't walk away. It had been awkward, imperfect, even painful at times. But it was real, and I realized that was what I'd been missing. For so long, I had been surrounded by hollow gestures, social media greetings, obligatory holiday phone calls, voices that asked "How are you?" but didn't really want to hear the answer. I'd been starving for connection that wasn't polished or performative, something messy, something flawed, something alive. But then the fear crept in, quick and sharp. Could I really trust him not to disappear again? Forgiveness, I had learned, isn't a single decision you make once and never think about again. No, it's a choice you have to remake every day. It's a risk, a leap into the unknown every time you decide to open your heart again. And I had the scars to prove how dangerous it could be. Still, that song, our song, had done more than stir nostalgia. It had reminded me that somewhere in the silence, Aaron still carried me in his heart. He hadn't forgotten. He had chosen to reach back. And that choice meant something. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the cracked paint on the ceiling. My birthday had begun with a single candle flickering in an empty apartment, me whispering a wish into the void, and yet somehow, it ended with something far more powerful. The fragile beginnings of healing. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. That night, before sleep claimed me, I whispered a quiet promise into the darkness. Take the chance, even if it scares you, even if it hurts. Because sometimes, one song is enough to remind you that you aren't as forgotten or as alone as you once believed. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds like golden threads, sharper and brighter than usual. It cut across the floor, dust motes dancing in the air, as though the room itself had been holding its breath. For the first time in months, I didn't roll over with dread pressing me down. Instead, I pushed myself upright, brewed coffee, and sat at the table with the mug warming my hands. That's when it happened. My phone buzzed against the tabletop. A simple vibration, a small sound. But to me, it felt like the strike of a drum in an otherwise silent song. I turned it over slowly, my breath caught in my throat. The message was from Aaron. I don't know if this is too much too soon, but would you like to grab lunch sometime this week? My treat, no pressure. I just stared at the words, my heart pounding in my chest like it wanted to escape. My instinct was to retreat, to crawl back into the shell I had built for myself. The inner voice of doubt whispered sharply, don't get your hopes up. People don't change, he'll disappear again. Better to stay safe than get hurt twice. But another voice, quieter but steadier, rose from the memory of that bridge. The memory of Aaron's eyes lighting up, of the notebook in his trembling hands, of the way his voice cracked when he said he wanted to show up. That voice told me this was different. I set my coffee down and typed a reply with fingers that trembled despite my best effort to stay calm. Lunch sounds good. Wednesday. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. The message hung on the screen, tiny, fragile, like a bird released into the open sky. Almost instantly, the reply came through. Perfect, I'll see you then. I exhaled so hard, I hadn't even realized I'd been holding my breath. The rest of that day, I moved through my routine with an energy I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't pure joy, not yet. It wasn't full trust either. But it was something in between. Something I hadn't dared to carry in far too long. Hope. That evening, after the dishes were washed and the city had settled into its nighttime hum, I pulled a box from the back of my closet. It was heavy with dust, its cardboard edges worn and sagging. Inside lay a photo album I hadn't opened in over a decade. The leather cover was cracked with age, the pages stiff as I turned them carefully. And then there they were, snapshots of Aaron and me as teenagers. Standing at the creek, our shoes muddy, our arms draped over each other's shoulders. Guitar slung across our backs, eyes shining with a certainty that the world belonged to us. I traced the outlines of those faces with my thumb. For years, I couldn't bear to look at these pictures without bitterness clawing at me. They had felt like ghosts, proof of something once vibrant, now buried. But tonight, I saw them differently. They weren't reminders of what I had lost. They were proof of what had once been real. And if something had been real once, maybe it could be real again, though different, older, perhaps a little scarred. When I closed the album, my chest felt lighter, not fixed, not healed, but lighter. The road ahead would not be simple. I knew that. Trust is not built in a single evening or a single lunch. Forgiveness would be tested again and again, and there would always be the risk, the undeniable possibility that Aaron might falter. But something inside me had shifted since the song, since the note, since the bridge where two grown men sat like boys again. For the first time in a very long while, I wasn't staring at the empty spaces of what I had lost. I was looking forward, at the faint outline of what I might still have left to gain. And maybe, just maybe, this next chapter wouldn't be about mourning the music of the past. Maybe it would be about writing a new song. One where memory didn't just bind us to what had been, but gave us the courage to create something lasting, something present, something alive. Wednesday came quicker than I expected. By the time I arrived at the little cafe Aaron had suggested, my stomach was tied in knots. The bell above the door chimed as I stepped inside, and there he was, sitting at a corner table, already looking up, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. He stood as soon as he saw me, that familiar nervous smile tugging at his lips. "Eli," he said softly. "Thanks for coming." I nodded, pulling out the chair across from him. "It's just lunch," I replied, though we both knew it was more than that. For a while, we talked about the simple things, the weather, the cafe's menu, the way the neighborhood had changed. It felt strange, almost like a first meeting, two people circling around something much heavier beneath the surface. Finally, I set my fork down and looked at him. "Why now, Aaron? After all these years, why reach out?" He let out a slow breath, his gaze dropping to the table. "Because I realized how much I'd lost. I kept telling myself I'd call, that I'd make it right when life slowed down. But life never does it? Then one day, I found myself humming that old song, and it hit me I'd thrown away one of the best things in my life. And I couldn't stand the thought of you thinking I'd forgotten you." I studied him carefully. His words weren't rehearsed. They carried the uneven rhythm of someone speaking from the gut. "You did forget," I said quietly. "At least, it felt like it." Aaron nodded, shame flickering in his eyes. "I know, and I can't erase that. But I want to do better now. I don't expect forgiveness overnight. I want the chance to earn back your trust." The honesty in his voice tugged at something inside me. It wasn't a perfect apology, it couldn't be, but it was real. We sat in silence for a moment, letting the clatter of dishes and hum of conversations around us fill the space. Then, almost unexpectedly, I chuckled. "What?" Aaron asked, his brow furrowed. I shook my head. I was just remembering how we used to argue over who got the last slice of pizza after band practice. And here we are now, awkwardly sharing lunch like strangers. He laughed too, the tension easing between us. "Some things don't change. You're still lying my fries." I smirked. Maybe. That small moment of shared humor, of slipping back into something familiar, wasn't just nostalgia. It was proof that the bond wasn't gone. It had only been buried under years of silence. As we finished our meal, Aaron leaned back in his chair. "Can we do this again? No pressure. Just one step at a time." I hesitated, then nodded. One step at a time. And for the first time, I believed we might actually mean it. The weeks after that night were unlike anything I could have imagined. The song that once symbolized loneliness had become the very thread stitching my family back together. Suddenly, I wasn't just the man who spent his birthday alone. I was the father whose note of love and the echo of a song pulled his family closer than ever. Maya, my daughter, began visiting every weekend, sometimes dragging her friends along. She'd laugh and say, "Dad, you're cooler than you think. Everyone needs to hear your old records." Watching her leaf through my vinyl collection reminded me of when she was small, when she'd dance in the living room to those same crackling tunes. It was as if time had folded in on itself, offering me a second chance. Ethan, my son, called me more often too, not just out of obligation, but to really talk. He'd share the stress of his long shifts, or sometimes just ask, "Dad, what's that song that goes?" before humming terribly off-key. And I'd laugh, realizing that music had become our bridge, a way to speak when words felt too heavy. But perhaps the most unexpected change was within me. That birthday had started as one of the loneliest days of my life, yet it ended as a reminder that I was still loved, still remembered, still needed. The note I had left, shaky and unsure, became a spark that turned my solitude into reunion. One evening, as we all sat around the table, Maya scrolling through her phone, Ethan arguing with his mother about whether pineapple belonged on pizza, I found myself smiling. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was no longer invisible. My presence mattered again. I realized something that night. Life has a way of circling back, of giving us moments we thought were gone forever. Sometimes all it takes is a word, a note, a song. So when people ask me about my birthday now, I don't talk about the loneliness, or the empty room, or the silent phone. I tell them about the song, the one that drifted through the air like a prayer, that carried my message when my voice alone couldn't. Because in the end, it wasn't just a song that reunited us, it was love. And love, when given a melody, has the power to be remembered forever. That was the birthday I thought I had lost, but instead, it became the birthday that gave me back my family. And I'll never forget it.